fine. It's really okay.
You want the arm around? No? Okay. Is this video about one conversation between two vegans in Chiang Mai, or is it about a broader and deeper question about ambition? I got a lot of videos talking about ambition. My whole Ted Carr series is in some ways reflecting on the question of ambition and what it means in our lives. I think ambition gets a bad name because people think ambition has to do with nothing but money. And ambition can be about all kinds of things. You can have ambitions to be a great artist, to be a great humanitarian worker, to be a great medical doctor, to be anything, to be a great writer, to be anything creative or destructive you can imagine, to be a vegan activist, to write children's storybooks, to be a good parent, whatever it is. Ambition can take on so many forms and directions. It doesn't always have to be attached to money, and sometimes can have nothing to do with money and so on. But I do, through YouTube and through veganism, I do keep meeting these young men who have absolutely no ambition. And when you ask them about their own education or their own career, past, present, and future, they have nothing to say for themselves. And whether or not that's shocking to you, you really should be shocked. When I talk to this guy, Kieran, his name on YouTube is Angry Vegan. That was really the most shocking and disturbing part of it, was just sitting there and looking into his eyes and asking him, like, well, what education do you have? Absolutely none. Does he have any plans to get education in the future? Absolutely none. What jobs has he done in the past, or is he doing now, or is he going to do in the future? And I'm simplifying only slightly to say absolutely none. He had done a little bit of what we'd call in American English, like Joe jobs. He was using Australian slang for this. I think he used terms like pick-up work, but little jobs here and there. And, for him, the only real ray of hope in his life is YouTube, is the possibility of making money out of YouTube, is the possibility of reproducing the success that someone like Durianrider has had. And Durianrider is, in this way, a really profound influence on his life. And it's pathetic. I'm just telling you straight up, meeting someone like that face to face and looking in their eyes is really pathetic. Now, as a parallel experience, which was not face to face, but just by written messages back and forth on the internet, I had this interaction with Ask Yourself. He uses his first name, I forget.
Isaac.
Okay, Isaac, thanks, I don't forget. So Isaac, his channel name is Ask Yourself, his name's Isaac. When I was writing to Isaac, early on, in terms of trying to calm him down and build bridges, I gave him my CV. I said, look, I know you don't watch my channel. This is who I am. This is where I come from. Like, you can get to know me. I'm a human being. We don't got to hate each other, kind of thing. And, at that point, he was pretty fixated on hating me. He did calm down eventually. But, when I was asking him those same questions, like, well, what education do you have? What education are you trying to get or you aspire to have? None. Zero. What career have you had? What are you trying to have? Zero. And so for him, I was not insulting him when I said that. He's out here really hustling. He really is pinning his hope for the future on donations from Patreon and YouTube success. So I'm sure, and he is a hardworking guy. He's obviously really pursuing that goal with gusto. But it is still, in a word, pathetic to meet someone like that who doesn't have any other goals in life, any other ambitions. And, in terms of my own ambitions, looking back, past tense, I wanted to study a language called Pali, P-A-L-I. And at that time, it was not taught in any university in Canada, coast to coast. Okay? I wanted to study languages like Cree and Ojibwe. A few universities now claim they teach Cree and Ojibwe. Cree and Ojibwe, these are languages that are not well documented, are not well supported, not well researched in Western academia, generally and specifically. I had ambitions to do things in terms of research, humanitarian work, for my own development and make the world a better place and so on, that have nothing to do with money and have nothing to do with traditional milestones of success, even within Western academia. So ambition can take many forms. But sure, ultimately, if we look down our noses at ambition when it's narrowly focused on money, then I think we also have to look down our noses at it when it's narrowly focused on fame, and especially pathetic has got to be YouTube fame and then YouTube fame within the digital vegan demi-monde. This is really micro fame. This is fame within fame within fame. But still, I mean, my really limited little bit of fame does make my life better. I meet interesting people. We're going to fly to France. We're going to post on YouTube, hey, this is when we'll be in France. Does anyone want to meet up with us? I already wrote to one friend of mine who's in Germany, and I said, well, look, it's not that far, but it's not that close. If you want to take a vacation, we can meet with friends. Sure, it's wonderful. It opens the door to a lot of really positive things in my life. But again, I'm a man who defines his life in terms of ambitions. And if anything, look, let's keep it all the way real. The most miserable times of my life, when I was the most acutely unhappy, was exactly when I was cut off from my ambitions and I didn't have new ambitions to replace it with yet. That, for me, is acute unhappiness. So like when I couldn't study Korean Ojibwe anymore and I didn't have the next project, or when I stopped studying Pali and didn't fasten on a new project yet. But that was really brief. I mean, some of those transitions were really quick. But having goals for your own personal development, goals, whether it's something as abstract as goals like the future of the vegan movement, whatever it is, having goals that define you in your life. And by contrast, by the way, so I met this guy, Kieran, using the name Angry Vegan. I also met another guy called Dexter when I was in Chiang Mai. Now, someone glancing through this, you might think those two guys have a lot in common. They're both vegans. They're both on YouTube. They both have small YouTube channels. They both met me while I was in Chiang Mai. But let me tell you right away, one of the real differences with Dexter is that he's a man who has ambitions. He has ambitions in terms of career, in terms of education. He has direction. When you ask him those same questions, which you more or less do, I met all these people for the first time, he's got focus. He's got meaning in his life. And he's doing things that are productively linked to the pursuit of those meanings in life. I'm not going to say the meaning of life. Let's keep it plural. Those meanings in life. And that is ultimately a totally different type of guy. And generally speaking, I have totally different expectations for him in the future. All right. That's most of what I got to say about meeting and talking to Angry Vegan. More generally, I mean, I look back at, in this channel many times I've mentioned, the really strange influence that a fictional character like Batman had on my life when I was growing up. And it's obvious that people like Durianrider, obviously they're not cultural icons in the same way that Batman is, but meeting and talking to these guys, the last few diehard supporters for Durianrider, like Angry Vegan, you get to see that the influence Durianrider had in their life, it's truly iconic, it's truly powerful. And unlike Batman, Kieran he sits down and eats dinner with Durianrider. He's sometimes gone over and stayed at Durianrider's place. There's a way in which Durianrider is more than human and larger than life, and is an almost a fictional character on YouTube. And there's a sense in which he's very immediately and personally available to these fans of his, and he has this really profound warping influence on their lives. A guy like Angry Vegan, he's now in that last diehard category, the last handful of people who still support Durianrider. And to some extent I can sympathize, because I understand that he must have some sense of mission and moral purpose of still supporting his friend when everyone's turned against him, like still supporting Durianrider, even though all the rational people have long since lost faith in Durianrider and his lies. But of course, at the same time, I have to regard it as despicable and self-defeating and pointless and wrong. And it was out of fear of Durianrider that Kieran posted a very intentionally dishonest video describing the conversation we had together. So very briefly, Kieran described that conversation as if we bumped into each other in a mall and just talked for a couple of minutes. He said that repeatedly. In fact, we met in a mall, we sat down, we talked for 2 hours. It was an in-depth, meaningful discussion. He asked me about my relationship with my mom. It was one of his first questions for whatever reason. We talked about that at some length. He talked about his own situation in terms of his love life and dating. It was a real, in-depth, at-length personal conversation. And one thing that was kind of touching, quite close to the beginning of the conversation, I asked him, I said, look, I can answer any questions or any doubts that you have, but, I hope you realize pretty much everything Durianrider's told you about who I am and my personal life, especially my sex life, is a lie. None of it's true. So We can talk about it. And one of the first things he said to me, "There's absolutely no doubt in my mind. I have no questions about any of that." And in that context, it was kind of moving because when I bumped into him, Durianrider had repeatedly made threats on the internet that somebody was going to stab me when I was in Chiang Mai, that somebody or some group of men would beat me up when I was in Chiang Mai. And he had also specifically said that if Kieran found me, that Kieran would beat me up. And Kieran alluded to that and joked about it also, these comments. So to have a guy like that in those circumstances tell you that there's no doubt in his mind that I've been telling the truth and that Durianrider's been lying, that's kind of touching and interesting in a way. And by contrast, something he said repeatedly, one of the first things he said to me again, he said, "Wow, you look so much thinner in real life." He said, "You don't look fat at all." He said, again, maybe 4 different points in the conversation, he commented that I was in better shape than he thought I would be, and that I looked a lot less fat in person than I did on YouTube, this kind of thing. And I said to him, like maybe the 3rd time he said that, I got out my phone, my camera phone, and I said, "Well, look, you keep saying you want to do a collaboration," because he repeatedly said he wanted to collaborate and do a YouTube video together. I said, "Why don't I just film you saying that, and that'll be the video." I could have this video of you saying, "Hey, you look a lot less fat in person than you do on YouTube." And he smiled, but it wasn't really a joke. And he said, "I don't think I could guarantee my own safety if I did that." And it's a witty line. It's a funny thing to say, but that's really kind of sad when you reflect on it, that he is reflecting that he would be in. He was afraid of Durianrider at the time, and in all of his actions since then, it's been very obvious that he is afraid of some kind of reprisal from Durianrider. So yeah, I was disappointed with Kieran. I was disappointed with his video that really I felt intentionally lied about and misrepresented the conversation that we had in many ways. He chose to lie there and suggest that I bragged to him about how good I was at picking up chicks. And he suggested that I just bragged out of the blue about how much I can bench press and how many push-ups I can do. That's really untrue. In context, he was repeatedly saying that I was in better shape than he was expecting. And then it also came up, we were talking about Durianrider's various lies about me. And I said, yeah, one of the first things, I think the first thing Durianrider said about me was back when he claimed that I was taking steroids. So in that context, I was saying, look, I do push-ups, I bench press this amount, but I'm really not in that great shape. So it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous on the one hand for him to be always saying that I'm really fat and out of shape. It's also ridiculous for him to be saying I'm on steroids. It's my personal physique is neither in one category or the other. So it was in talking about that I told him how much I bench press and so on. So he's really misrepresenting that in a defamatory way, trying to make me look like a bad guy, as if I just walked up to a stranger in the mall and in the context of a 2-minute conversation told that stranger how much I bench press, which would be a little eccentric. But in fact, this was a 2-hour conversation that started with him asking about my relationship with my mother. This was the first thing we talked about. Something like that. Then he talked about his own personal life, as I mentioned, his own career or lack thereof, his education or lack thereof, and his ambition and lack thereof. And he did talk about his love life, and it was in that context that I said, look, all these lies Durianrider is telling me about me, you can tell just in this conversation, I don't have trouble meeting women. I don't have trouble picking up women. You've seen how confident I was walking up to a complete stranger, namely you, and starting this conversation and really having a meaningful conversation where you got to know me right off the bat. That was in a context of threats of violence and all this nonsense. And I was still totally self-confident. He wasn't. He was trembling like a leaf. I mean, especially early on, he was literally trembling and shaking when he was talking to me. And, he eventually calmed down. But he was worried. And he was worried for a reason. Reason wasn't me. I wasn't a threat to him or his safety. But I think he was really worried about the consequences of just talking to me like a human being. And that's why he lied about it when he made his own video describing it in such different terms. But, he told me things which were quite honest, and I appreciate his honesty, that he wasn't happy about what was going on in his romance life. And, he was trying to meet women and meeting women through YouTube and meeting women in Thailand and so on. And so, what I told him about myself and the reality of my love life and what have you, that was really in that context. It was well-intentioned and it was appropriate. And frankly, I think I was giving him advice that he could use. Anyway, look, man, whether we're talking about Nina and Randa or talking about Angry Vegan, I mean, in some ways, I feel especially sorry for the people who are successful enough on YouTube that it justifies their delusion. It justifies their fantasy. We were looking at that girl, Caitlin Shoemaker, last name is Shoemaker. She's vegan. She just dropped out of university to do YouTube full time. She just dropped out of university so that, in her own words, she could do 2 videos a week instead of 1 video a week on YouTube. And she was honest enough to admit she's doing that with debt, with student debt from 1 year of graduate school. She was getting a master's degree.
In physical therapy.
Right. And she's dropped out of that to do YouTube. And she does. I mean, she gets 30,000 viewers here or there, more than 10,000 viewers per video. And from my perspective, those people are the most deluded of all. You know, it's like, so you're sacrificing real career ambitions, you're sacrificing something real for a fantasy. And otherwise, though, at the low end, a guy like Angry Vegan, he's lucky to get 1,000 viewers on a video. So there's nothing there to justify the fantasy, but it's his own sense of desperation, aimlessness, lack of ambition, lack of direction in life. And again, ambition does not need to be about money. Education does not need to be about money, people. You know, keep it straight. But it's out of a terrible sense of emptiness that I think he reaches out and clings to YouTube as the only ray of hope in his life. And for channels big or small, I don't know, man. A lie becomes dangerous not because it's different from the truth, but because it resembles the truth. And a fantasy like being famous on YouTube, it destroys people's lives not because of its impossibility, but because it seems so possible, because it seems so attainable. It's exactly the attainable fantasies that'll lead you to drop out of college, or will just give you an excuse while years are slipping by without any plans for career or college. It's the attainable fantasies that can destroy your life.